Today we're looking at a pair of small SUVs that are both funky to look at and they're supposed to be fun to drive as well. Both of these models, the popular Hyundai Kona and the all-new Nissan Juke, have eye-catching looks and urban-friendly dimensions. But which is the best of these two small SUVs? Well, that's what this comparison test will help you find out. First up is the Hyundai Kona, which is one of the most popular small SUVs on the market in Australia. This one is the Highlander variant, but it's not the turbo all-wheel drive one. Nope, ours is the non-turbo front-wheel drive version. In this test, it's up against the all-new Nissan Juke, which we have in range-topping Ti trim here. This model is all about offering something unconventional to buyers who want to stand out from the crowd, but in second generation guise, the new Juke is also pretty smart. In this video, we'll cover off important stuff like practicality, value for money, safety, and of course, how they drive. And if you want to read the full detailed review, you can always go to the CarsGuide website, or if you're watching on YouTube, look for the link in the description below. It's right near the like button and the subscribe button and the bell notification icon, but I'm sure you've already hit all of those, right? First up, we'll consider what each of these SUVs costs. The Hyundai Kona Highlander has a list price of $36,660 plus on-road costs. That's for the two-wheel drive model. The turbo all-wheel drive costs more. But because it's the front-wheel drive model, it puts it almost bang on the price of the front drive only Nissan Juke Ti, which lists at $36,490. Those are list prices, not drive-away prices. Just keep that in mind. We'll go over some of the differences in standard gear in this video, but be sure to check out the CarsGuide site for a comprehensive equipment breakdown across these two models. Let's take a look at the practicality on offer. These are 5-seat small SUVs and they're pretty compact in terms of size. So let's see which is best when it comes to fitting in both people and stuff. We attempted to fit the same items in both of these SUVs. First up, you can get a look at the boot of each of these models when it's completely empty. Now, here's how much space the CarsGuide luggage takes up in the boot. As you can see, it didn't all fit in the Kona. And here's how they go with the CarsGuide pram in there. Again, the Kona's boot is quite small. Now, what about spare wheels? Both models offer a space saver as standard. Next up, backseat space. We'll start in the Kona. If you're thinking of the Hyundai Kona as a family car option, your family would want to be small. I'm 182 centimeters or 6 feet in the old money, and it's pretty tight back here for me. So if you've got teenagers or if you regularly ferry adults around with you, just keep that in mind. It is pretty tight. My knees are hard up against the seat in front of me, which is set for my own driving position. I'm a bit limited in terms of headroom as well. And while I can move my feet around a little bit, it's hardly what I'd call a comfortable space. But if you have little kids, they could be quite fine back here, and there are ISOFIX child seat anchor points and 3 top tether points as well. There's no rear seat air vents. You do get dual mesh mat pockets, you get bottle holders in the doors, and you get a flip down armrest with center cup holders as well. Should we check out the front? Up front in the Hyundai Kona, things are much more pleasant than they are in the back. You get a lot more comfort and convenience items up here, including dual electric sliding seats, and that's power adjustment for both front seats. Plus, both front seats are also heated and cooled, which is excellent. And you also get a heated steering wheel, which makes a big difference on cold days like today. Plus, the Kona has a head-up display in front of the driver, which has plenty of great information, including blind spot monitoring icons. So even if you're in the middle lane on a freeway, you can tell if there's a car either side of you. It's very smart. The Kona Highlander has a wireless phone charger, and it also has an 8-inch touchscreen media system with Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and SatNav. And it doesn't feel quite as creaky and groany, like it feels a bit more solid. And I guess that's something that the Kona feels generally. It does feel quite solid. It's got quite robust materials, you might say, and that means that you don't quite get the level of luxury feel inside the cabin that you do in the Juke, but it does feel quite sturdy, and I like that. And as you'd expect, there are a pair of cup holders between the seats. There's big bottle holders in the doors. They're right next to the infinity speaker covers. And yeah, this has got quite a sound system. Maybe not quite as good as the Jukes though. The backseat space in the Nissan Juke is a bit more accommodating. You do have a bit more knee room. Well, I do, behind my own driving position. Just a reminder, I'm 182 centimeters tall. That's 6 feet if that's not the usual unit of measurement that you use. And I have plenty of space back here. To be frank, I've got a lot more foot room, more knee room and more headroom as well. But because it does have a dark headliner, it feels quite dark in here overall. And the seat comfort actually isn't that good. Sure, it looks interesting and it's got a nice design to it, but this part here just sort of juts out into your lower back a little bit. It's kind of like lumbar support that you don't want. So that's not great, but it does have a USB charger down here, which is nice. There's a little storage cubby underneath there as well. No rear air vents. You do get a pair of map pockets. They're proper map pockets, not the mesh ones like you get in the Hyundai, but you don't get a flip down center armrest, and there's no cup holders back here either. You do get bottle holders in the doors, but they'd have to be small bottles. The Nissan Juke's interior is a more interesting place to be than the Kona's. In this Ti spec, you get some really nice materials. There's this micro suede style stuff across the dashboard with a nice white pinstripe that just adds some level of interest. I like the design of the vents as well. I like the flat bottom steering wheel, and I really like the seats because they're very comfortable, and they even have Juke embossed in the leatherwork. And you might notice something interesting back here near my ear is a speaker. That's right, there are Bose speakers in these headrests, and they really do add a nice field to the listening experience if you're tuning into your favorite song. And speaking of music, you've got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and SatNav all standard in the media screen, but the screen itself, hear that? It just doesn't feel tough. It feels quite flimsy, and it's slow to react to touch as well. There are other things that you can notice when you look a little bit harder inside the Juke's cabin. You've got ambient lighting, like around the transmission selector here. There's also ambient lighting in the tops of these panels on the doors, and that's a really nice material as well. It does feel kind of plush in here, and there's something that can be said for that. There are some issues though when it comes to storage. You've got a pair of cup holders here, and there is a covered center bin here, which is about the same size as the Kona's, but you don't get wireless charging, and the shelf that you get for your phone, when you plug it into the USB, it's actually a little bit too small to actually fit. And I've got a small iPhone, not one of the big ones, so just keep that in mind. Just like the Kona, there's a digital instrument cluster in front of the driver. There is no head-up display, but in the cluster in the instrument binnacle, you will find the information that you need, like digital speedometer and also directions for the sat-nav. Just like the Kona, it's got single zone climate control, and it has heated seats for the front, but they're only 2-stage, not 3-stage. And that middle stage can make all the difference, I'm told. And there's also manual seat adjustment, no electric seat adjustment. And in this car, you can't get a sunroof, but you can in the Kona. So it's a bit of a mismatch. There are some really interesting parts, but also some shortfalls. These are urban-focused SUVs, but if you're buying a small crossover like this as a family car, then you'll wonder about the safety inclusions on offer, and it's a vital consideration. We always say that. But how do these two particular variants compare when it comes to safety equipment? Well, here's the information you need to know. These two models are close for safety tech, but the Nissan does have a slight advantage. It has a 360-degree camera where the Kona only has a reverse cam. And while both have AEB that works both at high and low speeds, the Juke has cyclist detection and auto high beam lights, and the Kona doesn't have either of those. Both have lane keeping tech. The Hyundai's is a lot better than the Nissan's, and each has blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert. The ANCAP ratings are the same too, the maximum 5 stars, though they were tested a couple of years apart. The two SUVs here have quite different powertrains. The Kona Highlander we have, for instance, is the one with the non-turbo engine and a traditional torque converter automatic. You can get a downsized turbo with a dual clutch and all-wheel drive, but it will cost you more. The Nissan, on the other hand, has a downsized turbo engine with a dual clutch auto as its only available powertrain. Like the Kona we have, it's front-wheel drive. You can't get a Juke with a more powerful engine or all-wheel drive. Which is better to drive? Well, let's get to it. For this test, we conducted an extensive drive incorporating urban testing with roundabouts, speed humps, traffic lights, parking, all that sort of stuff, and also highway kilometers and country driving. And here's what we found. In this comparison, there's been a lot of urban focus on the drive experience because they are city SUVs, and the Kona is a more livable urban option because it has an engine and transmission that don't have that much hesitation from a standstill. If you're going in traffic or if you stop-start at traffic lights or in roundabouts, you don't want to have to think about what's happening with the engine and transmission and to plan ahead. You just want to be able to point and shoot, and that's what this car offers you. The 2-litre engine, sure, it's not overly peppy, and at higher speeds it can feel, well, a little bit underpowered, to be frank, and the transmission at higher speeds is also a little bit eager to go to the top gear and just use it for the most efficiency that it can get. But around town is where it proves its point as a really impressive urban runabout, because it just powers through the gears quite easily. You get away from a standing start without much fuss, and it's pretty enjoyable when you do need to put your foot down, as long as you're not going up near highway speed. But if you want extra pep from your Kona, you can get it. There's a 1.6-litre turbocharged engine with a dual clutch transmission, and if that appeals to you, it also adds all-wheel drive. Plus, it increases the power and torque tremendously. So if you want a quicker Kona, then that's the one you should consider. Other things I really like about the Kona are its steering, which is quite weighty and heavy, but I like that. I like the way that it feels. It's got more directness to it than the Juke, and that makes it just a little bit more trustable in corners. And the ride comfort, well, the front end is quite good. The rear suspension can be quite sharp over sharp edges or speed humps, for example. So just keep that in mind. If you drive on a lot of rough surfaces, it might not be the best for you. One thing I've noticed when jumping between the Juke and the Kona is that the Kona doesn't have as much noise in the cabin. I will say that there's less road noise in this car as well. The Kona does have a slightly smaller wheel and tyre package, and so it does feel just a little bit more, well, livable, I guess. Overall, the Kona Highlander is my pick for the drive experience. If you've seen any of my other comparison videos, like the one with the Volkswagen T-Cross, you'll know that in some instances, downsized turbo engines and dual clutch transmissions can be really good. But that's not quite the case in the Nissan Juke, because this one can be a bit questionable in the way that it behaves at lower speeds. Now, it is an urban SUV, so you preferably want it to be quite good at lower speeds, but this one takes a bit of guesswork because the engine and transmission and the stop-start system all in combination can be a little bit finicky to get away from the line cleanly. If you do a lot of urban driving, I suggest that when you take a Juke for a test drive, you do a lot of urban driving to see if you can deal with it, because for me, it's not great, not anywhere near as easy living as the Hyundai Kona. Obviously, with a downsized turbo engine, you do get a little bit of extra thrust. There's more torque to be used, and that does have some benefit. There's no doubt about that. So if you suddenly need to accelerate, you do get a little bit more kick in the back, and that is a nice thing. And the dual clutch transmission, once you build speed, is actually quite well behaved. In fact, Both of these cars have different drive modes that you can choose. The sport mode in the Juke is actually really quite impressive. It does up the ante a little bit in terms of performance, but let me say this isn't a performance small SUV. Another thing that lets down the performance aspect of the Juke is its steering. One of my colleagues described it as PlayStation-like. You're not quite sure what's happening or what reaction you're going to get depending on how much steering wheel lock you apply. I find that on center it can be, well, really dull and vague, but then you wind on a little bit more lock and it wants to be more direct. Again, it's a bit too much guesswork in the Juke. It should be more predictable than that. One thing that is predictable is that 19-inch wheels and low-profile tyres don't equal the best ride experience, but it does deal with big bumps quite well, and on country roads, it's pretty comfortable. I'd really like to drive a lower-grade Juke, I haven't yet, to see if one on 17-inch wheels with chubbier tyres makes a difference in terms of the urban ride comfort, because based on our other reviews of the Juke, it certainly does. But the thing is, compared to the Kona, it's just not quite as polished, and that's why it's coming second in terms of drive experience in this test. Over our testing, we also kept a tally of the fuel consumption for both of these models. Here you'll see the official combined cycle figure. Now that's what the manufacturer claims the car should use. And here you'll see our real world testing figures. We'll give you a sec just to let it all settle in. The SUV that appeals to you more out of these two could come down to your personal preferences, your tastes, your desires, or even just which one you like the look of more. For me, across the gamut of the CarsGuide criteria, there's one that just stands out just a touch more than the other, and it's the Hyundai Kona Highlander. It just has a few more items that you'd expect for this price. It's pretty decent to drive, and while the transmission can be a little bit annoying at higher speeds, in most situations, it's just a more polished vehicle. The Nissan Juke Ti is, well, a big step forward for the Juke, but not necessarily as good as it could be. Just a few things that could require a little bit more polish to make it an even better small SUV. But which one of these two small SUVs would you choose? The Nissan Juke Ti or the Hyundai Kona Highlander? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget, hit like, hit subscribe, share this video with your friends, and also hit the bell notification icon to stay up to date with all our latest videos.